President Aliyev, thank you for your time and for speaking to us on BBC News. Do you intend to fight for every square inch of Nagorno-Karabakh and the surrounding 7 territories?
Our position was very clear from the very beginning. We were ready and we're still ready to stop any time when Armenian side will commit itself to the liberation of the occupied territories. And I'm saying this from the very beginning of the war, that if Armenian Prime Minister publicly will make a commitment that they will liberate the occupied territories, we will stop. But so far, it's already 40 days, and there's no sign of him to say this.
So that means you will be fighting to the finish?
We will fight until the end if Armenia does not make a commitment that they will withdraw from occupied territories. I think Armenia is making a big mistake, because if they listened to us from the very beginning, the war would have stopped a long time ago, and we would have been already on the negotiation table.
But with respect, Mr. President, you're delivering an ultimatum. You are saying that they have to agree to give up all of this territory, and then there can be talks. That's a very big precondition for talks.
No, not exactly, because what I'm saying is based on the basic principles. And basic principles are very clear with respect to the liberation of the territories surrounding Nagorno-Karabakh. It is a very clear message to Armenia, and unfortunately Armenia did not agree to the basic principles which have been elaborated by the Minsk Group co-chairs and the previous Armenian leadership. These basic principles say that at the first stage they have to liberate 5 occupied territories, at the second stage 2, but already 4 out of 5 has already been liberated. Therefore, if they do it, when they will liberate part of Agdam, when they will liberate Kelbejer and Lachin, we will stop.
So just to be clear, President, because these locations are not familiar to our international audience, are you saying that if the Armenian leadership agrees to vacate the territories outside of Nagorno-Karabakh, you will stop, you will not fight on?
Exactly, that's the position which I articulated many times. At the same time, this is not the whole, issues on the negotiation table. Of course, after that, we will work on the return of Azerbaijani refugees to Nagorno-Karabakh, because before the war of the 90s, there have been 40,000 Azerbaijanis living in Nagorno-Karabakh, and the percentage of Azerbaijani population was 25%. So they expelled them all, and after that committed the ethnic cleansing and then announced independence.
But the fear is that if you take control of Nagorno-Karabakh by force, that you may do exactly the same. There are very strong fears being expressed by Armenia that there will be ethnic cleansing of their people.
This is groundless accusations. First, if Armenia really is concerned about that, why they do not agree to the basic principles? Because if basic principles are confirmed, and Armenia will make a commitment, which I for many times already am demanding from them, then everything will stop.
So you are not asking them to withdraw from Nagorno-Karabakh. You are asking only for the territories alongside.
We demand implementation of UN Security Council resolutions, which were adopted back in 1993, which demanded immediate, complete and unconditional withdrawal of Armenian troops from the occupied territories. With respect to the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh, they will continue to live there. They are our citizens. And I, on many occasions, expressed this position.
Well, with respect, President Aliyev, you are saying that the Armenians will consider to live there as your citizens. You have very recently said, and I'm quoting you here, if they do not leave, we will chase them like dogs. Now, that's hardly the kind of statement that would make people feel safe.
Please, be accurate with my statements. What I said, I meant those who continue to occupy our territories. I meant Armenian military political leadership. I meant so-called authorities of Nagorno-Karabakh, this criminal junta, which already, by the way, ran away. And I got information that the so-called leader of Nagorno-Karabakh is already in Yerevan. So I meant them. I didn't mean Armenian people.
So are you saying that you will give an absolute guarantee that there will be no ethnic cleansing of Armenian citizens in Nagorno-Karabakh?
Yes, we are not Armenians. They committed ethnic cleansing against us. They expelled all Azerbaijanis from Nagorno-Karabakh and 7 surrounding districts. Thus, we have 1 million refugees as a result of the ethnic cleansing policy of Armenia. But we will not behave in the same way. We will not take revenge. I said many times, when even they bombed Ganja, when they bombed Barda, when they bombed other cities and killed 92 people, civilians, I said we will take revenge on the battlefield. Therefore, taking into account this official position and the fact that there are thousands of Armenians who live in Azerbaijan and nobody is ethnically cleansing them, why should we do it there?
Well, with regard to the Armenians who are living here in Azerbaijan, we have been told that many live in fear, that they change their surnames because they do not want to be identified openly as Armenians. So how can Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh have confidence that they will be safe?
This is wrong information. There are
well, it's coming from people who are here.
Well, maybe somebody got married and changed the name. That's usual practice here. But no. There are many Armenians who live here, and we know that they're Armenians. And by the way, I can tell you, not many people know that. The sister of the former Armenian defense minister, Arutyunyan, lives in Azerbaijan. You know, if you would like, we can organize a meeting with her. Therefore, this is not actually fear, this is Armenian propaganda.
But if there's propaganda, President Aliyev, there's clearly propaganda on both sides. There is institutionalized messaging against the Armenians, which takes place here. It's part of the state dialogue. People have been primed to have hatred for the other side. Are you actually expecting them to be able to coexist?
Why they can coexist in other parts of the world? Do you know that there are villages in the neighboring Georgia where Armenians and Azerbaijanis live together in the same village? They live together in Russia, they live together in Ukraine, they live together in Azerbaijan, in many other parts of the world. And if you observe the situation in the world now, apart from some pro-Armenian rallies in the West, the situation between Armenians and Azerbaijanis is very calm and quiet. Why they can live there and cannot live here?
Do you honestly expect a single Armenian to stay and remain in Nagorno-Karabakh if you take control and live under the rule of Azerbaijan?
I think it is possible, because I, as a president, say today and said many times that we want to live side by side. And if we didn't want to live side by side, why should I say that? Today, as you know, Azerbaijani army is winning the battle. Today, we liberate one city after another, one village after another. And in principle, anyone in Azerbaijan can say, look, they committed genocide in Khojaly. They expelled Azerbaijanis from their native land. They destroyed all our cities and
Armenians, of course, also claimed that they were expelled and they were the victims of massacres over the years.
From where they've been expelled? From where? They have not been expelled. We did not commit ethnic cleansing against Armenians. No, Armenians live in Azerbaijan. They expelled us not only from Nagorno-Karabakh, but from 7 districts on the administrative border of Nagorno-Karabakh where Armenian population never lived. They changed the names of the cities, of the villages.
Talking about religion, President Aliyev, we have had an attack in Armenia, a church, a cathedral attacked.
That was not in Armenia.
We have had an attack in Nagorno-Karabakh, I beg your pardon, a church which was shelled twice on the same day. Now, you have said that possibly it was a mistake. You have said you will carry out an investigation. What's the result of the investigation?
In order to investigate it, we have to be there to investigate. I said many times, either it was a mistake of our artillery or it was a deliberate provocation by Armenians themselves.
So they shelled their own church?
Exactly.
They, of course, deny this.
Yeah, of course, they deny everything. They denied that they hit Ganja with ballistic missiles from the territory of Armenia. Armenian Prime Minister said that it is false information. So your country, United States, France, Russia, they can easily detect from where the ballistic missile was launched.
But with regard to
with
the church...
With regard to the church, I said either it was a mistake or they did it deliberately, because the images of that church which I have seen show that this is a very minor damage. And this damage can be repaired within maximum 2 weeks. This is first. Second, you here in Baku, probably you've seen Armenian church in the city center, which we restored, and we keep thousands of Armenian books. If we are destroying churches, as Armenians say, why we didn't destroy it here?
But can you say categorically that you did not, your forces did not attack the church?
I say categorically that many times. Either it was a mistake.
So you may have done it.
Who you?
Your forces may have done it.
It could have been by mistake, only because there was no military target. Church was not among military targets. We had military targets in Stepanakert, which is a city called Khankendi in Azerbaijan. We had military targets in Shusha, and we hit those military targets because they attacked us. So probably that was a mistake.
But could you have made a mistake twice in the same day? It was hit twice.
Why not? Have you seen the images of Azerbaijani mosques on the occupied territories? They're all destroyed. They keep pigs in our mosques. And the recent video, footage of mosque in Zangilan, which was liberated, shows that they keep pigs there.
But you have made a point, President Aliyev, of talking about the military superiority of your army. You have 100,000 men. You have the most sophisticated weapons that can be bought from Israel, from Turkey, particularly the Turkish drones. So with all of that expertise at your disposal, could there be two mistaken episodes of shelling a church?
Absolutely, there could be. Because we need to be there in order to investigate. And when we will be there, we will repair it. We will restore it. You will see. When we go back to Shusha, we will restore it.
But doesn't that mean if these weapons can be so imprecise and mistakes can be made so easily, that you shouldn't be using them in civilian areas?
We are not using in civilian areas. We are using them in order to destroy military infrastructure. The city of Khankendi was full of military objects. The city of Shusha full of military objects. We do not attack civilians unlike them. They attacked Ganja with ballistic missiles, deliberately destroying the civilian compound.
Well, let me tell you, Mr. President Aliyev, what our own BBC colleagues have seen. Now, this is not hearsay. This is what was filmed. This was what was experienced by BBC colleagues. They were in Stepanakert in Nagorno-Karabakh on the 1st, 2nd and 3rd of October. They witnessed random shelling of the town, including at an emergency services centre, an apartment block destroyed. As people tried to flee, there was a drone overhead. Shortly afterwards, more shelling nearby. They characterised it as indiscriminate shelling of a town without clear military targets. Now, this is not hearsay. This was witnessed and filmed by the BBC.
I doubt this witnessing. I doubt it, because it is
well, they were there, President Aliyev.
So what they were there? It doesn't mean anything. That can be fake news. We had military...
And why would that be fake news? Why would any journalist going there decide to broadcast fake news?
Because of the biased approach to the conflict, because of this black propaganda against Azerbaijan in international media.
So you cannot be guilty of any wrong. Everything is false news.
Absolutely. It is false news, and we closely watch the Western media. And during these 40 days, I had maybe almost 30 interviews, and all of them were very aggressive, and as if it was not an interview, as if it was a kind of accusation. Nothing is happening on Armenian side. Nobody is asking Pashinyan why he hits with ballistic missile Ganja, why he killed 92 people, why they attack funeral in Terter, why they use Smerch with cluster bombs to attack Barda, killing 21 persons and injuring 70. No one asks him. No one asks him where does he get weapons. Only attack on us. Only demonizing Azerbaijan from international media. So that's why what BBC, your colleagues, so-called witnessed in there, I do not believe that.
Well, in fact, they filmed it, President Aliyev. But of course, it's important to say that there has been killing of civilians on both sides. There has been indiscriminate shelling on both sides. We have witnessed here ourselves the aftermath of the attack in Ganja, in which a ballistic missile was used. So there is no doubt that there have been casualties on this side as well, of course. But equally, when you mention cluster munitions, there is evidence that you have used cluster munitions in civilian areas in the streets of Stepanakert, documented extensively by Human Rights Watch, photographs, videos, testimony from witnesses, and they actually had the opportunity to go to the scene. Now, why are you using cluster munitions, which can be so imprecise, in a civilian area?
We are not using them. This is another fake news. It is Armenia who uses cluster bombs.
So everything is fake news?
Of course. Why not? We are facing this fake news for decades. You know how many fake news were published in the British press about Azerbaijan?
But you admit,
Thousands.
President Aliyev, you are fighting a war, you are making advances, but then you're telling us, on the other hand, you're not using these weapons.
No, we are not, because we are fighting on the battlefield. We are fighting against Armenian army. We are not fighting against civilians. No sense in that, because our task is to liberate the territories, and we liberate one village, one city after another. And we do not use cluster bombs. We don't need it. We have enough other
So the evidence
tools.
uncovered by Human Rights Watch is fake also?
Of course, because Human Rights Watch, due to a very biased approach to Azerbaijan, due to the fact that they did not notice any wrongdoing in Armenia, even when journalists are dying in prison, even when main opposition leader is in prison. They don't report on that. Only against us, therefore, we stopped cooperation with Human Rights Watch some 5-6 years ago. And only now, when this war started, we invited them to come and to see, because we wanted them to testify, because there was no way for them to say no. That's why we invited them. So this organization is not credible in Azerbaijan.
May I ask President Aliyev, how many civilians have been killed on this side now? What is the death toll?
92 civilians killed, 405 wounded, almost 3,000 houses either demolished or seriously damaged by Pashinyan regime. So this is a fact, and you can verify it when you go there and see.
We would like to be able to see the front line for ourselves, and during our last trip here we were prevented from travelling independently. Can you give us an assurance that we will be able to go there this time?
Yeah, I think it is possible, but the security measures must be taken in order, to protect you. But I think it is possible. It is regulated by the general situation, by the martial law in Azerbaijan. Therefore, it must be in line with these temporary regulations.
So we can't have free movement at the front line?
What do you mean the front line? Going where the battle is?
Yeah.
There have been journalists there. They've been.
But not moving independently?
What do you mean independent?
Moving independently without minders from the government, moving at their own discretion, which is what we do in other conflicts. We decide where we wish to go, we make our own choices, we go there, we film.
I'm not sure about that. I think that must be checked with our authorities whether there's possibility or not. Any company which foreign journalists only have one purpose, is to protect them and to advise them where they can go and where they cannot go. But there's nothing to hide. You can see our destroyed villages. You've been to Ganja, probably you could go to Barda also. Therefore, we have nothing to hide. We are fighting on our own land. Armenian army is on our land. They are aggressors, and we've been the victims of aggression. But today, we pay back. Today, we show them their place, and we will move them until the end, as I said, if they do not liberate voluntarily the remaining part of the territories.
That sounds like a very chilling message to Armenian civilians.
No, why? We already talked about Armenian civilians. We have nothing wrong, in communications with them. And I said many times, and I think what I say, I keep the word, that after we liberate the territory from these criminal gangs which occupied our territory, Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh will live much better. They will have more salaries because the salary in Azerbaijan is higher, more pensions because pension in Azerbaijan is 3 times higher in Armenia. They will have all the social protection. We will invest in those areas largely. They will get rid of poverty.
Will they have the full range of human rights which people here in Azerbaijan do not have? Will they have a fully free media? Will they have an opposition that's allowed to raise its voice? Will they be allowed to have things that people here in Azerbaijan do not have?
You think they do not have it? Why do you think that people in Azerbaijan do not have free media and opposition?
Because this is what I'm told by independent sources in this country.
Which independent sources?
Many independent sources.
Tell me which.
I certainly couldn't name sources.
Oh, if you couldn't name, that means that you're just inventing the stories.
So you're saying the media is not under state control?
Not at all.
And there is a vibrant, free opposition media? Where do I see this?
You can see it in the internet. You can see it everywhere.
But not in newspapers?
Why? You can see it in newspapers. Whom do you call opposition here? Can I ask you?
Well, is there allowed to be an opposition here?
Yeah, it is allowed, of course.
I mean, NGOs are the subject of a crackdown. Journalists are the subject of a crackdown.
Not at all.
Critics are in jail.
No, not at all.
None of this is true.
Absolutely fake. Absolutely. We have free media. We have free internet. Now, due to the martial law, we have some restrictions. But before, there have been no restrictions. And the number of internet users in Azerbaijan is more than 80%. Can you imagine the restriction of media in a country where internet is free, there is no censorship, and there are 80% of internet users? We have millions of people on Facebook. How can you say that we don't have free media? This is, again, a biased approach. This is an attempt to create a perception in Western audience about Azerbaijan. We have opposition, we have NGOs, we have free political activity, we have free media, we have freedom of speech. But if you raise this question, can I ask you also one? How do you assess what happened to Mr. Assange? Is it a reflection of free media in your country?
We're not here to discuss
No,
my
let's
country.
discuss.
No.
Let's discuss.
No, President
In order
Aliyev.
to accuse me, saying that Armenians will not have free media here, let's talk about Assange. How many years he spent in Ecuadorian embassy? And for what? And where is he now? For journalistic activity. You kept that person hostage, actually killing him morally and physically. You did it, not us, and now he's in prison. So you have no moral right to talk about free media when you do these things.
Returning to the conflict, how
Yeah,
long...
better return to the conflict, because this is not what you like. You like only to accuse, only to attack. But look at the mirror. Look, I tell many times, before coming and lecturing us, and in your question, accusing me, it's not a question, it's accusation. You talk like a prosecutor. Why? If you're so democratic and so objective, why you keep Assange in prison? For what? You keep him in prison because of his journalistic activity.
I'm not keeping him in prison, President Aliyev. But
You don't like this.
It's not a question of don't like.
You are
it's
not used to this.
It's not the
because
subject
you are
of our
used
interview.
only to attack.
It's not the subject of our
Only.
interview. And with respect,
No,
President
it is not
Aliyev,
the subject of interview, but you raised it.
you raised it.
No, you raised it.
You raised the case
You
of
said
Assange.
Armenians, if you don't have a free media in your country, how Armenians can live without opposition? That was your accusation.
You've answered the question, President Aliyev. Could I ask you, going back to the conflict, as you say, 40 days and counting, how long do you expect this to continue? Is this going to be a battle through the winter?
Nobody knows. Again, coming back to the beginning of our conversation, if Pashinyan tells today that, yes, I accept basic principles and I will liberate part of Agdam, Kalbajar and Lachim in 1 week or in 2 weeks, we will stop immediately.
But he doesn't need to give you a guarantee for liberating the rest of Nagorno-Karabakh. You were speaking about the territories on the outside. I just want to be very clear to understand your position.
That's the basic principles. On the basic principles, we have a very clear picture. Liberation of 7 districts, then return of Azerbaijani IDPs, then return of Azerbaijani people, refugees, to Nagorno-Karabakh.
So he has to give you Nagorno-Karabakh also?
He has to allow Azerbaijanis to go back there, to go back.
So you don't need to be in control of Nagorno-Karabakh?
Well, what do you mean, control?
Do you need to take physical control of Nagorno-Karabakh and remove the Nagorno-Karabakh Defence Forces, remove any Armenian official presence? Or are you saying that you would be satisfied if your civilians are allowed to return?
In the basic principles, which Armenia did not accept, and they are not valid because Armenia did not accept them. In the basic principles, there is a provision that Azerbaijanis will return there and they will be living there in peace, in security, with security guarantees. We did not go too far in negotiation process in order to specify what kind of governance will be there. Our position is there must be a certain level of self-governance, like a municipal governance or cultural autonomy for Armenians, but we didn't go too far. And if Pashinyan did what I asked from the very beginning, when we liberated Fizuli, then, the war would have stopped And we would have talked now about how to move on the negotiation table. But he doesn't make this commitment. Therefore, if it continues like that, we will continue. There is no other way. We will go until the end before we restore territorial integrity of the country, which is recognized by the whole world.
You've made significant advances already and taken territory alongside Nagorno-Karabakh. How soon do you plan to start sending your civilians back?
First, we will need to evaluate the damage caused by Armenian state against Azerbaijan and against the property of our citizens. Because in the liberated territories, almost everything is destroyed. I said many times that in the big city of Fizuli, when 10,000 of people lived, we could not find any building in order to put a flag on. So we raised it on a derrick. Therefore, first we will evaluate the damage. We will invite international experts in order to evaluate the damage which was caused to our ecology, to our infrastructure, to our civilians who lost their houses, and to our state, to our historical heritage, because all the mosques destroyed, all the museums destroyed. This is first. And after that, of course, there will be lawsuits against Armenian state, and we are already preparing for that. Second, we will need to create at least initial conditions for people to live there. We need to provide, construction materials. We need to invest in infrastructure.
So do you think it's a matter of years, realistically?
We've already resettled 300,000 refugees and IDPs during all these times of occupation. And the last years were most, impressive, because only this year we are resettling 7,000 families of refugees. So we can, I think, manage to resettle from 7,000 to 10,000 families a year. But of course, for that, we need to have infrastructure. We do it in Baku, where everything is ready. But in those areas where everything is destroyed, we need power stations, we need roads, we need water supply. So all that will take time. I don't know how long it will take, but we will try to do everything to do it in the maximum.
One or two final quick questions, President Aliyev, if I may. You have had huge support from Turkey, which is a very strong ally of Azerbaijan. How often do you speak to President Erdogan?
Very often, especially now, several times a week.
And daily?
Not daily, but if necessary, maybe several times a day. We are brothers, we are friends, and when you say huge support, you are right, but I want to specify this is a political support and moral support, nothing more than that.
Are there Turkish pilots here piloting the drones that are being used?
No.
So they're being used by your forces?
Yes, everything is used by our forces, not only Turkish drones, but Israeli drones and Russian military equipment and military equipment from other countries which we purchase and which we pay for, unlike Armenia, which gets it free of charge. Everything is done by us.
Do you foresee a day when you might want Turkish direct military involvement? We have seen that Armenia has already gone to Russia and said, what are you prepared to do?
Yes.
Do you see a day when you would be asking Turkey to become more involved?
I don't want to look too far ahead, because it will depend on the situation on the battlefield. It will depend on Armenia's behavior and on other countries' behavior, because on many occasions I said that we're against internationalization of the conflict. We asked all the countries, neighboring countries and not neighboring countries, to stay away from this conflict. We are fighting on our land, internationally recognized. So this is our position. And I think that what is happening now will continue. So there'll be no need for any kind of military involvement of Turkey. But with Turkey, many years ago, we signed a document which provides also military support in case of aggression. So we have more or less the same format, a legal basis like Armenia and Russia have with Turkey. So if Azerbaijan will face an aggression, and if Azerbaijan will see that the Turkish military support is needed, then we will consider this option.
I'm going to beg your assistance just for two more questions, President Aliyev, if I may. What would you say to those who argue, and I'm sure you've heard this argument being made, that one of the reasons why the conflict has reignited now and why you are pursuing such a strong advance is because of this very strong backing from Turkey, that this really has been the clincher for you?
No, not at all. And By the way, where is this Turkish military involvement? Who can verify that? Who have seen any Turkish soldiers?
Not involvement on the ground, but the strong political support, the constant statements, the very strong backing from a very strong regional power.
Yes.
Has that not been a factor in this?
This is a factor, but this factor became very important after the conflict started. Because if you follow the chronology of the conflict, so this statement started hours after Armenia attacked us and we pushed back. But Turkish political support to Azerbaijan has always been here. It's not just like it happened all of a sudden. It has always been like that. Why the conflict started, I can tell you, because Armenia wanted to disrupt negotiations. They launched an attack on us on 12 July on the state border, and they entered our territory. We had to push back, and that clash lasted 4 days, and we stopped after we pushed them back from Azerbaijan, and we did not cross the state border. Then, in the middle of August, they sent a sabotage group which crossed the line of contact, and the head of that group was detained, and he confessed that they were planning terror acts against civilians. And then they started to shell our cities on the 27th of September, and we had the first victims in the early hours, maybe early minutes, among civilians and among our military servicemen. They shelled us with heavy artillery. So that's how it started. Why it started? Because...
President, forgive me, because I know you wish to tell us the history, but I've one or two more things to cover with you.
Okay.
You mentioned the loss of military servicemen. Why is it that you are not releasing the figures for your military losses? Are you concerned that support might wane if people knew how many young men are being killed in this war?
No, not at all. First, we don't have many. If you look at the scale of the war and the fact that we had to break those engineering constructions and all those, positions which Armenian built for 30 years, our losses are minimum losses. Of course, we cannot talk like that because every life of the human being is priceless. But we have much less losses than Armenians because our military capability is much better, and we have modern weapons which allow us, to have minimum losses, particularly those drones. Because without those drones, all those tanks and guns would have killed so many people. So it is not a reason because we think we will not have public support. On the contrary, those people who leave their close relatives, their sons, their brothers, they ask us not to stop. Can you imagine? I receive thousands of letters every day, thousands of letters. And in no one of those letters I saw that stop. No. They say, I lost my son, I lost my brother, I lost my husband. Please go until the end. Please go until the end. Because our people lived in this situation for almost 30 years.
But that almost sounds, President Aliyev, like you have no way out of this war. Like you must fight to recover every last inch.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But at the same time, I said from the very beginning that if Pashinyan, him personally, not his foreign minister, him personally says, Armenia withdraws its troops from Agdam, from Kelbejar, from Lachin, the 3 remaining regions which they have to liberate, and give us a timetable, we will stop immediately. We don't want to continue this war. We don't want. We want to stop. And what I'm saying now, I was saying from the very beginning. And people who know me, they know that I am a person of my word. What I say, I do. If Pashinyan tells it today, I promise you that we will stop immediately. But he doesn't do it. He doesn't do it. He wants to regain back. He wants to use these ceasefire opportunities to regroup his forces, to mobilize more people. He is now, as you said, sent a letter to President Putin for military assistance, thus admitting his defeat. And if he admits his defeat, why he cannot say that he will liberate the territories? These territories do not belong to Armenia. These are our lands. They have to give them back to us. If they don't do it, as I said, we will go until the end. No way to stop.
Do you know how many civilians have been killed inside Nagorno-Karabakh by the activities of your forces?
No, we don't know. We heard the official information from Armenian Defense Ministry. We do not believe this official information.
They say 45 civilians.
Yes, I know, 45 or 47. We don't know. I cannot say something which I don't know. But I think that it is much exaggerated, because we did not attack their villages, we did not attack their cities. We only attacked...
With respect, President Aliyev, there is documentary evidence of attacks
I
on
did
their
not finish
villages
yet.
and on their cities.
We attacked Hankandi because Hankandi was full of military installations, so we had to destroy them.
Civilian houses have been destroyed.
Well, it happens sometimes during the war. It happens. We are not so accurate, you know, if the artillery is just next to the house. It is not like Ganja when they hit deliberately by ballistic missiles the civilian compound with no, in the radius of maybe 20, 30 kilometers, no military object.
But are you troubled by reports of civilian loss of life?
Yes, of course. I regret. I regret that it happened, and I express condolences to all those who lost their, relatives, I mean civilians, in Nagorno-Karabakh. But again, taking into account the scope of conflict, again, saying that every life of the person is priceless, still the losses are very low. And this shows that we are not fighting against civilians. You know how many civilians they killed during the war of the 90s? Thousands. Thousands.
There are concerns.
Ojali genocide. They killed 613 innocent people, among them 63 children and 106 women, only because they were Azerbaijanis. Ojali genocide is a well-known, documented fact.
Do you accept that there is a danger now of a humanitarian catastrophe this winter in Nagorno-Karabakh? You are closing in. You could be in a position soon to besiege the area. What is going to be the fate of the civilians inside?
That's the question not to me, to Pashinyan, to stop. And I say how to stop.
But you could cut them off. If they're cut off by your forces, how can they survive?
We will take care of them. We will take care of them, absolutely. No doubt about that. We will provide them with everything, with food, with water, with everything. No doubt about that. And all our military commanders got a direct instruction from me in the first hours of the conflict that civilians must be taken care of. Do you know the story about two elderly persons whom we found in Gadrut? Just their relatives and the military, they just left them and run away. So one lady and one gentleman of almost 90 years old. And we brought them here to Baku. We put them to the hospital. And we surrendered them to Armenia. But you know what happened? When that old gentleman was already on the border in Kazakh, far away from here, Armenians refused to accept him. They said he is ill and he will die soon. We don't want him, you know? That's what they've done. And this person, under the care of Red Cross, was put to the hospital. And the lady was surrendered to them. And the man, unfortunately, died. That's how we treat civilians. Therefore, those who live in Nagorno-Karabakh now, they can be absolutely sure that we will take care of them, and they will live under Azerbaijani, umbrella much better.
But 90,000 of them approximately have already fled. They don't seem to be comforted by these assurances.
According to our information, the real population of those who lived in Nagorno-Karabakh was from 60 to 70,000 people. All those figures are highly exaggerated. Therefore, I doubt that 90,000 could flee, because the maximum 70.
May I ask you a long-term question, President Aliyev? How do you see the future of the South Caucasus? How do you see peace coming here? I mean, do you ever see a day when there will be peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia?
Yes, if you ask my position, I think it is possible, but it not only depends on me, it depends only on Armenian side. And during these 40 days of war, on several occasions, I said that I wish to see the day when three Southern Caucasian countries would be, working together. As, for instance, we do with Georgia, our close strategic partner and friend. Look how many projects we implemented with them, how close our relations are. They're based on historical, legacy, and they're based on pragmatism, on balance of our interests. So why Armenia became isolated? Because of occupation. And if you look at the map of, for instance, our energy and transportation projects, you will see that they bypass Armenia. The shortest way for us to deliver our resources to the international markets was through Armenia, and we offered them that in the 90s. We said, look, liberate the territories. Let's build the pipeline through Armenian territory, and then entering Nakhchivan, and then Turkey. We will then combine the interests of all countries. We'll make all countries of the region, in a certain way, interdependent, and that will be a guarantee for peace. They said no. I offered many times through Minsk Group co-chairs, they can prove it, financial assistance, social programs in Nagorno-Karabakh, and financing from our budget if they liberate territories. They said no. I offered autonomy, the highest possible autonomy in the world. I offered to Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenians said no. They said no to everything. So what happens now is their fault. And by the way, the first president, who was overthrown by Karabakhi clan, published an article saying that what Azerbaijanis are offering now to us, they will not offer. That was in the middle of 90s.
And you would accept an autonomous status now for Nagorno-Karabakh?
Now I prefer not to talk about that, because now situation on the ground has changed. But I offered this many times, and Armenians rejected.
So now what do you want for Nagorno-Karabakh?
Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan. It will be part of Azerbaijan as any other region of Azerbaijan. It will depend, again, on what will be Armenian government's behavior. It is still not too late for them to be reasonable. It is still not too late for them to get more on the negotiation table. Because after we take control of other cities and villages, there will be nothing to talk about. So they're losing time. And if they behave reasonably, we can work on some forms of self-governance. We are not against it. But they should not violate territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. They should be based on the best practice which European countries like Italy, like Sweden and Finland have between themselves. Why there should be something different? And then, of course, the peace will come to the region. And I think that, but frankly speaking, with this Prime Minister of Armenia, I don't think that there's any possibility for peace. There must be a change of government in Armenia. Reasonable people must come. Those people which are not affiliated with bloodshed and military crimes. And then I think by joint actions we can create a new format of cooperation in the Southern Caucasus among Azerbaijan, Georgia and Armenia, which used to be in Soviet times. We had friendly relations, we lived together.
Is there any compromise that you can offer for the sake of peace? Is there anything that you can say now you are prepared to give?
You know, I cannot offer compromise when other sides just is not willing to compromise. You know, during these times, Armenian Prime Minister also on several occasions was, interviewed by foreign journalists, and he was asked. There was one program on Russian TV. They were asking the same questions to me and to him. And when I was asked about compromise, I said what I'm saying to you. When he was asked about compromise 3 times, he said self-determination for Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. But this is not compromise. What compromise they're ready to do? And by the way, today the opportunities to compromise is shrinking because we are getting those territories back by force. Our compromise is still on the table, but it is not 100% sure that it will be on the table if we take all these territories back. Then what we will talk about? So for Armenian Prime Minister, for him, for his own sake, it is the best thing is now to listen to me and to say publicly, we liberate Agdam, Kelbecer, and Lachin. And we stop, and there'll be a ceasefire, and if they don't violate it again, and we will come back to those issues which you refer to, status, autonomy, cultural autonomy, community, etc. But we can be fair, and I always fair with our people. Today, situation changed. Therefore, what I offered to them a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe is not valid. But it is premature to talk about.
Have you hope of a peaceful settlement?
Yes, I have hope because my hope is based now on our success on the battlefield. My hope is not based on Armenian constructive position because What we've seen on the battlefield, what we've seen in Fizuli, in Jebrail, we saw that they were not planning to liberate the territory. They were just lying to us. They were lying to co-chairs of the Minsk group because they invested so much in these fortifications that they would have never liberated them. It took us a lot of time to take control of Fizuli because of that. And then when we were moving by the Araz River towards state border with Armenia, on several villages, there have been very severe clashes, and it took us several days to break that defense.
I wanted to ask, if I may, a question on behalf of our Azerbaijan service of the BBC, and if you would be happy to reply in your own language, I think they would be very happy to have that.
Sure.
What kind of future do you see here for the people of Azerbaijan after this conflict? Some would say here, and I know you disagree, but some would say that this is a society which still does not have full freedom, full human rights. Do you see a peace dividend if this conflict finishes? Do you see the society here being able to move on from the Nagorno-Karabakh issue, which is so consuming? What future do you see here?
Mən hesab edirəm ki, ölkəmizin gələcəyi çox parlaq olacaq. Biz son illər ərzində çox böyük uğurlara imza atmışıq və ölkəmizin həm siyasi, həm iqtisadi sahələrdə uğurları bugün beynəlxalq təşkilatlar tərəfindən də qəbul edilir. Beynəlxalq arenada böyük uğurlar əldə edilib. Azərbaycan bugün çox güclü bir ölkəyə çevrilibdir. Ölkə daxilindəki bütün məsələlər öz həllini tapır. Və əlbəttə ki, Dağlıq Qarabağ münaqişəsinin həlli ölkəmizə yeni nəfəs verəcək. İnsanlar ilk növbədə öz dədə-baba torpaqlarına qayıdacaqlar. Öz yaxınlarının qəbirlərini ziyarət edə biləcəklər. Azərbaycan dövləti mütləq bu işlərdə onlara maksimum köməklik göstərəcək. Biz işğal edilmiş torpaqları, azad edilmiş torpaqları yenidən quracağıq. Evlər tikiləcək, inzibati binalar, xəstəxanalar, məktəblər və beləliklə ölkəmiz üçün yeni bir dövr başlanacaq. Bu yeni bir dövr böyük imkanlar açacaq. Təkcə iqtisadi sahədə yox, eyni zamanda siyasi münasibətlər sahəsində hesab edirəm ki, müsbət meyllər daha da güclənəcək. Azərbaycan beynəlxalq arenada öz rolunu daha da artıracaq. Azərbaycana olan hörmət daha da artacaq ki, biz güclü dövlət kimi öz ərazi bütövlüyümüzü bərpa edirik və ədaləti bərpa edirik, beynəlxalq hüququ bərpa edirik və beləliklə ölkəmizin gələcək inkişafı əminəm ki, çox uğurlu olacaq. Biz bugünə qədər bütün qarşımızda duran vəzifələrə uğurla çatmışıq. Bütün bəyan etdiyim hədəflər onlara biz çatmışıq və ərazi bütövlüyümüzün bərpası, torpaqlarımızın qaytarılması mənim prezident kimi başlıca vəzifəm idi. Mən şadam ki, bu vəzifənin öhdəsindən də şərəflə gəlirəm və Azərbaycan xalqının dəstəyi ilə və zəhməti və cəsarəti hesabına biz torpaqlarımızı qaytarırıq və Azərbaycan xalqının fədakarlığı bir də onu göstərir ki, biz böyük xalqıq, biz birlik nümayiş etdirmişik və bu birlik bizi daha da gücləndirəcək, ölkəmizi daha da qüdrətli ölkəyə çevirəcəkdir.
Great. President Aliyev, thank you so much. You've been very generous with your time this morning, and we're very grateful.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.